Hey guys, this is Dimitri and today we're taking a look at the mini-ITX version of the very elegant 900 series from InWin. This is the 901, and considering how popular mini-ITX systems are becoming, InWin is right in line with such offerings. Although priced at just under $200, this is definitely a luxurious buy. Now there's no denying this case is gorgeous. Built out of full aluminum and tempered tinted glass, this is a perfect fit with the contemporary space, and quality-wise this is the closest thing you can get to case labs. The exterior aluminum frame is all in one piece. I definitely would love to see more case manufacturers pursuing this type of emphasis of clean and modern designs. Now we don't usually show the packaging, but because of the glass, careful consideration was given to preserve this in one piece when it arrives to you, with thick padding and a protective curtain over the case, so damaging during shipment is unlikely, and yes, you get a grumpy mailman. Now like I said earlier, this is a mini-ITX version of the 904. It looks practically identical but in a smaller form, and they have made some changes to the internal layout for the better. Because of the one-piece aluminum, the 901 has two rubber pads at the bottom, and thanks to very precise build quality, the chassis is very stable. The front element is completely solid with only the logo peeking through, so all the connections have been moved to the side with a pair of USB 3 ports, audio jacks, and a power switch only, so no reset button here. This open space also serves as an intake with a magnetic filter included. The fan is conveniently installed to a removable bracket, and while the design isn't the most optimal for airflow, don't be expecting enthusiast level of cooling here, but I think InWin managed to make it work with the design. The 901 does support a slim optical drive, and based on users' feedback, they have modified this chamber to be more open, so you see multiple cutouts, and they have also pre-installed a SATA cable onto this chamber, so it's just plug and play without uncomfortable routing as we saw on the 904. InWin has also expanded the power supply chamber for longer unit compatibility, and because of the orientation, it will actually help with internal exhaust. Our 170mm power supply slides in no problem with clearance to spare, even at the top, so the fan isn't totally choked. Coming to the rear, this is by far the most questionable design layout because there's over 2 inches of clearance between the I/O panel and the exterior aluminum. But because there are no fan mounts up top and only a 90mm rear fan slot, this exterior aluminum piece would allow for a 120mm all-in-one water cooler to be installed. There are appropriate cutouts for tube routing, and while you still will have to take off the cover every time you need to plug something in or out, you can still have decent cooling. As for CPU tower clearance, only 130mm is available, so this external rear AIO is a welcome feature. The tinted glass panels are only slightly see-through, so I definitely encourage some LED installation. They sit on rubber standoffs and held in with low-profile thumb screws, so it's very simple to take off and get inside the case. Drive storage is all located in one spot with 2 hot swappable brackets plus 2 dedicated 2.5-inch brackets on either side of the drive cage. At the back you can see appropriate cutouts for the 2 SSDs, although they could be slightly larger for easier SATA connection. The hot swappable caddies do support either drive, but one annoying aspect of this retractable hinge, you can hear it rattling and any vibration of the case will be audible. You can remove it, but it does help with extraction of the drives. I wish there were some rubber grommets or something to prevent these things from rattling. The case will support 12-inch GPU, so that's very appealing for enthusiasts, and I do appreciate sleeving on all of the cables. And turning the case around, it does show that InWin has thought about cable management, as we have all the appropriate cable cutouts and a very large CPU cutout as well. Plus there are holes for cable ties and a pair of adhesive clamps that are included with the accessories. Now speaking of accessories, there's also a cleaning cloth for the glass, so that's always appreciated. Now while there's only half an inch of clearance at the back, there is a hinge to tuck away your cables and a fairly large opening to route all your power supply cables from the bottom chamber. And so here is the build. Surprisingly, it went really well. The space in front of the power supply allows this type of cable concentration to avoid spreading the cables too much behind the motherboard. and everything connected just fine except the power and the hard drive activity light cable. It wasn't long enough to be routed through the top, so it had to cross the motherboard internally. The GPU has some clearance, so it's not completely choked, but I did have issues with closing the glass panel due to those sticking out power cables. Luckily, the power cables we have here are low profile, but that's certainly something you have to take into account if you consider this build. And looking at the back, the case cleaned up very well and I had no issues with any routing. Plus everything is very flush to the case, so there's no issues with closing the panel. And to finish up, the 901 follows the very same elegant and clean design as its bigger counterpart with outstanding build quality. The power supply chamber has been redesigned for better compatibility, and the included SATA cable for the optical drive is a very welcome feature. I love the hot swappable drive base, plus the simple SSD brackets around. There's ample room for enthusiast GPUs, and cable management was pretty straightforward. While cooling is limited, I still think they did a pretty good job with what they got. The bottom intake will help GPU cooling, and due to limited CPU tower clearance, an external 120mm all-in-one is a decent option. Now, what I dislike are the rattling hinges on the hot swappable drive caddies. They're an excellent consideration, but they've missed out to include rubber padding to avoid audible vibrations, which for $190 is a bit disappointing. Overall though, the 901 feels like a much more polished enclosure compared to the 904. And a huge props to InWin for listening to our concerns and modifying the layout to be more functional. I feel it is much more space efficient, and although cooling and water cooling are still limited, I think it achieves what it is designed for perfectly. And if you can afford this damn good art piece, you won't be disappointed. Now, we know the price may seem inflated for a mini ITX enclosure, but you really get what you pay for just under $200. So what do you think of the 901? Putting pricing aside, would you consider building one of these? Leave your comments down below as to why or why not. As always, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.